Thank you, Nate and Ava, for giving me this opportunity to showcase you all everything I learned this semester from the blockchain decal. Um, I'm very thankful that you were very flexible with my financial and academic circumstances this semester. So without further ado, here is quite a long summary presentation of almost everything I learned about blockchain this semester. Presentation by me, Jasmine Lau. I divided most of the topics from class into 8 sections and 21 chapters total that's divided into these 8 sections. So first I'll be going through an overview of organizations, how organizations could be structured in a sense of how blockchain will be structured, and how individuals view privacy, what privacy methods are there in organizational structures. Then I'll go over cryptography and how to keep that privacy secure. So going through a mathematical understanding of hash functions and hash algorithms in order to transfer information, database security, and digital signatures. Then I'll go over cryptocurrencies, introducing early cryptocurrencies, going through an overview of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then diving into Bitcoin, specifically mining Bitcoin and wallets of Bitcoin. And then the next section would be over smart contracts, how consensus and smart contracts are kept, and then going over Ethereum in the next section. Finally, the last 2 sections will talk about decentralized finance and the future of blockchain and other uses, whether that be scaling into bigger use cases, other operations you could use with blockchain, and DAOs. So first, I'm going to review what decentralization even means in an organization. So in order to begin understanding blockchain, we'll need to understand organizational structures, because ultimately blockchain is a way of sharing information amongst people within a group. And these people are individuals or parties that are organized into bigger structures and bigger groups. There are 2 main categories, I guess, the opposite ends of the spectrum of sharing information within an organized group. So one end of the spectrum is complete centralization. And the other end, the opposite end, is a complete decentralized organizational structure. So in a centralized organization, information passes through a central authority. All information travels to one place in order for that process, the computer or person in that center, to sort through the information to pass it on to other people in the organization. In a decentralized organization, information passes through every individual person or party that's involved in the organization rather than through a central hub. So now the main differences are, so if there's a bunch of data that you want to share with people in a centralized organization, you only need the person in the center to change the data, to share the data, and authorize the transaction of that data between others. So this is great because this process can be done quickly. All you need to do is tell that central hub to share that information or change the information, and that update can be shared to everyone that's connected to that central hub. Whereas in a decentralized organization, in order to share information, every single person that is involved in that group will have to authorize the sharing and change of that information. And this, of course, will take a lot longer than the method used in a centralized organization. However, it's very secure because every participant in that group authorizes the change in data. So every individual will store that information and will get to say if a change will be made or will not be made in the data. Um, an example of these things in real life could be the different ways corporations might be structured. For example, in a very big company, you'll have a CEO, and he or she will have VPs, and all the VPs will have their managers and managers with their employees. Of course, the CEO will be the person who knows the most information about the company, and he or she will share only relevant information to each VP. So, VP of Finance will only know the finance information, VP of Marketing only knows specific information about marketing, and then VP of Tech will only know specific information about tech. And then they distribute all the tasks and data to the managers underneath them and then the employees underneath them. So every single employee, in order to get approval to do something big, will have to, go up the corporate ladder in order to get any decisions authorized. Whereas a decentralized company, a lot of examples will be startup companies because the CEO works very closely with all the first employees and VPs of the company. That means that when the CEO makes a decision, he or she will ask all his VPs, his or her VPs, and all of their employees into this one big meeting. Could be like 20 people instead of in a big company that'll be thousands of people. And it could be so their small company of 20 people will sit together and decide together what the best decision for that company will be. That is an example of a decentralized organization. So, why is it important for us to understand the differences between a centralized and a decentralized organization in order to understand blockchain? Well, ultimately, blockchain is a form of ledger that is mostly decentralized. There are many different types of ledgers out there, and a ledger is let's say, a database or collection of accounts in which every transaction between accounts, transaction meaning sharing information, changing information, um, is recorded. Now, there are many different ways that these accounts can be recorded and stored in a database. Traditional databases will have hash tables in which, in order for every like piece of data and transaction is sorted in a huge graph, if you like to envision that. However, in a blockchain, the data isn't really sorted in a big graph. It's actually sorted, each unit of that graph is filed in a line. So each block or unit points to the next block. Therefore, in order to find a specific unit, you'll have to go through and verify all the other transactions and blocks that are on the blockchain. This data structure does not use any um, tables to give a shortcut to just find a specific unit. Therefore, this data structure that the blockchain is built upon is inherently decentralized because in order to find a piece of information, you'll have to go through all the information. Now, as I said before, a decentralized organization works when every participant agrees and authorizes a transaction of information um, at the same time in order for that transaction to be validated, to be put in the database. So we're going to go through how a blockchain makes sure that every participant um, fairly authorizes transactions to be put on the blockchain ledger. Now, you could easily say that a transaction can be any transaction can be accepted onto the ledger, but this allows some people to collude in the system. Let's say one person says that he or she wants to send information to person A, while at the same time sending that information to person B. However, he or she only has one file of that information, so he or she cannot possibly send it to both people. Um, everyone in every participant cannot log both of those transactions because only one is possible. That's one of the flaws of a naive consensus. So we can go a step further and let's say we'll have a democratic consensus. If a participant happens to, you know, collude and break a lot of the agreed rules of being a part of such a decentralized organization, other participants can vote to have the colluder kicked out of the group. Now, this will be great that everyone can vote whether to accept or deny a transaction that is written onto the ledger. However, one of the downfalls to the system is that since some of these ledgers are open to the public, and open for everyone, as is the reason why blockchain's available, because they want everyone to be in charge of the data that's being stored. Since this blockchain is open, that colluder can pretend to have multiple other accounts as other participants with different names, however, being controlled by the same colluder in the background. And when the voting happens, the colluder will have more accounts and participants to vote for the colluder's transaction. This happens too in the democratic government of the United States, where some politicians have a lot more power than others because of the amount of money or the amount of representatives that they have in the government. So that could easily destroy a decentralized organization. Now, in order to prevent that from happening, there is a Nakamoto Consensus. The Nakamoto Consensus was created by this algorithm guy who made a set of rules for voting against or for a transaction to be included in the system. So the Nakamoto Consensus doesn't have a voting process like the Democratic Consensus has. It has a series of tests to prove that each participant is a willing and able participant of the ledger. So this series, it's like giving an exam to a bunch of students, and if you were a real student, you would take the exam, and if you're not a real student, you really wouldn't care about taking that exam. So that's what the Nakamoto Consensus does. It incentivizes participants who are actively a part of the ledger to go through these processes to prove that they're willing, able participants who make logical decisions. And so those dummy accounts and dummy participants that are made by a colluder can be easily detected through a Nakamoto Consensus algorithm. So, as we can see, one of the main reasons to use blockchain is for security of data. It is extremely hard to tamper information or change it without the approval and consensus of all the participants of the ledger. Um, Now, the main other reason people enjoy and trust in blockchain, besides security reasons, is for privacy reasons. So, in a centralized system, let's say a bank, for example, in order for you to actually interact with your account and all the transactions within your account, your bank holds pretty much your identity. So every identifying factor, whether that be your address, your name, your social security number, your account number, is um, manageable by the central hub, which is in this case the bank. Um, in a blockchain system, there would be no reason to have a central hub holding all identity information of any of the participants. We'll go into cryptographic hash functions and private and public keys later bit in my presentation. Um, but those cryptographic functions ensure in ensure that the identity of a participant isn't compromised if a central hub is compromised, because there is no central hub. It will be extremely difficult with those security functions implemented for any other participant to figure out the identity of other participants in the ledger. Um, this is extremely important um, going forward in the future as data starts to belong to individuals who create them and own them and isn't hogged by central organizations that might abuse, share, and sell that data.